This podcast is protected under the laws of the United States and other countries. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or exhibition may result in civil liability, criminal prosecution, and the wrath of the tall man.
Boy!
Welcome to 90 for Chill, the podcast with CatBusRuss. This is CatBusRuss. You can follow what I'm watching on Letterboxd. Try to get yourself some previews of what upcoming episodes may be. My username there is CM Darth, as in Cool Movies Darth. My fellow podcasters told me that wasn't working. This week is going to be another look back at my great conversations with The Poetic Critic. That's The Poetic Critic on Letterboxd. We're going to discuss our disdain, I guess, for millennial thought when it comes to modern cinema, or I should say great cinema. Let's just face it, Marvel, modern, not too great. But we will have our debut episode, the official kickoff of 90 for Chill, the podcast with CatBusRuss. So we'll do that hopefully Tuesday. I'll have that drop, and everything for the third season will get rolling. But to really get this show rolling, I need guests, and with that, you can be on the show by just offering a movie, a theme, a director, an actor. As long as we focus on sub 100-minute material, I think we're going to have, as they say in Shaun of the Dead, a slice of fried gold. My email address is rustthebus07@gmail.com. Send me an email there, and if you can't think of something under 100 minutes, just give me anything. I'm going to figure out that formula. If we happen to talk about what you want, more power to us. So rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast apps. This is a Spotify podcast, so I think that pays the bills. Otherwise, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Stacia Harden for looking after my ass the last 19 years, and I hope she's doing the same for everybody else she touched in her life, and I hope she's taking good care of the one-eared angel, Skimble, the cat. So I do really need to step back, though. So yeah, we're going to trash the millennials and the Gen Z a little bit. But the more fun part of our conversation, we're going to talk about Kubrick, Allen, Disney, and vampires. And maybe some critical race theory. Let's get controversial. Let's get dangerous. That would have been great if Darkwing Duck had a movie we could have talked about last week. But hopefully you enjoy the show, and can't wait to really kick things off next week.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
On this island, in this building, through this door, down this hallway, lies the most frightening experience of your life. Prepare yourself for They Came From Within if you think you're not afraid of the dark. If you think you have a strong stomach. If you feel nothing can shock you. If you believe you've seen everything. If you say you don't scare easily. What are they? Raging demons that must be exorcised. Bloodthirsty creatures that must be killed. Or incarnations of absolute evil. They came from within. They possess men, women, and children, and drive them to acts of unbelievable horror. No one is safe from them. No power on earth can stop them. The only escape is death. They came from within. If this picture doesn't make you scream and squirm, you'd better see a psychiatrist. Quick. Rated R.
All right, it says we're going. So, this is 90forchill.com, the podcast. This is your host, Russ Stevens. Thanks for sticking with us. Not planning on having an episode next week. That's because Facebook's my primary social media device, and I'm just not into people wishing me happy birthday that I may not have talked to since high school. Yeah. Just doesn't really seem too sincere. So, how are we doing over in Morton?
I'm fine.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So, you are gracing us, the Poetic Critic is gracing us once again with their presence. This time we're a little more planned out. So, I don't know if that's a good thing because I know
It's just a little more.
right, but as I say, Allie, you really, I kind of dropped, just surprised you at the pod, hoping to get 20 minutes, and
Yeah.
yeah, we get Allie's favorite episode. So, but I let you choose the theme since you're doing me a favor. As for all my other listeners, I'm open for more guests. I'm sure Rory and I can keep this up at least for a while. I know you're planning to go back to the work.
Just say work.
Oh, all right. Well, either way, work hours are gonna change things up, possibly. So
A little.
yeah,
I can still help out here, I think,
Right.
on weekends off. But anyway.
No, I understand. Okay, so regardless, I definitely need assistance with the pod, and I got ideas like Mark L. Lester. How the heck was he considered a legitimate enough director to get onto that petition for the NC-17 rating change? I mean, I love Commando, and I really love Showdown in Little Tokyo, but to have his name up there with Spielberg, Scorsese, everybody South Park is referenced at some point.
Right.
It's a little odd. So, but as I said, because I am getting a favor from Big Sis, she wanted to do a theme of movies pre-1980.
Yes. I'll explain what my thinking was when you asked me to do this. You might have noticed it again, but in the past week, there was a big kerfluffle on film Twitter, as some people like to call it, regarding, there have been some comments. I'm not going to name the names because I don't want anybody to get harassed over this, because it got pretty ugly for some people. But there was some talk, people who were in the habit of bragging about how they didn't watch older movies. Like, this guy had come on saying that he'd only just watched Citizen Kane a few days ago, and it was breaking a rule of his that he didn't watch anything produced prior to 1975. And on top of that, he didn't like the movie. And the response to this, from a lot of folks like me who are older people, granted, that there seems to be this real pride some people have in not watching older movies. And I think 1975 was an interesting cutoff for that, because
It's Jaws, so I mean, it's the beginning of blockbuster cinema.
Yeah, roughly so. And it's the beginning of blockbuster cinema, but also late New Hollywood, because as Drew McWeeny and Scott Weinberg discussed on 80s All Over, the 80s don't really begin for film until roughly early 1984. Because until then, there is still a lot of new Hollywood work being produced and a lot of stuff you wouldn't see now.
Well, I mean, you still had, you could say that, but I mean, you had Raiders, you had 2 Star Wars movies.
Right. There's a lot of overlap.
Okay.
It's the transitional phase.
It's like these millennials at 82 trying to sneak into my proud Gen X at
right
81.
Now, let's go back for a minute.
Okay.
And on top of these people making these kind of comments on Twitter and getting some backlash, Martin Scorsese wrote another article, I think it was for Esquire this time, in which he was talking about Federico Fellini's work. And in the essay, which is mostly about the Fellini stuff,
right?
I skimmed it over, but it was mostly about Fellini. He does bring up the issue of how modern moviegoing has become dominated by this focus by major American studios on content over art, tying into the comments he'd made about how he wasn't a fan of the Marvel movies, that got him in a lot of hot water online from people who felt he was selling those movies short.
Well,
And
truth be told, you have Iron Man and Black Panther, maybe Guardians of the Galaxy that they really say are art.
yeah, I mean, I've only seen a relative, maybe a third of the Marvel movies, and I'm not that interested in seeing more than that. I do still need to see Black Panther, and that's one of the few exceptions I can think of.
Right.
That I feel that would be worth my while. So it led to this focus on what is this generational or cultural divide. There's overlap, of course, between the generation and the culture, but this increasing feeling that the kind of people who like Marvel movies, and which has some overlap with people who disdain older movies, because it's so common and are almost, some of whom are almost proud to boast about not knowing from older movies, is deeply frustrating, especially at a time when, although there are more avenues to get movies than we had, say, in the 1980s, that they're not being used to their best and fullest. Because another point Scorsese made was that the major services was how major services like Netflix, which he has worked with, so he's not a complete old fogey in that regard, and Amazon or Disney Plus don't do much to curate the content, to encourage people to make it easy for people to see the best material that's out there, and to encourage people to be more adventuresome and have a better sense of their film history.
You could really blame that, I think, of once Netflix got into original media. And
That's part of it.
Because I watched Battleship Potemkin on Netflix. So
yeah, but in the early years, they weren't too bad about that sort of thing.
They
but
were dependent solely on that, and once everybody wanted to get into streaming, it thinned the game out. There's there.
Right. There's been a lot more. I mean, there's more paywall. It feels like there's more paywalls than there were even in the days when we had VHS and a few pay cable movie networks for watching cut.
I don't know if I'd say that, because in the pay, it's about cord cutting. You are going to save money for the most part by it being a cord cutter.
Right.
I don't think there's really much difference there. I think it's really just more of the fact that we have a generation, and I can attest to this because when I'm at the bank, I have come home from watching like a movie from Netflix, DVD.com. It's just DVD.com, and I put that in the outgoing mail with with all the receipts and such we're sending out, and I'm getting judged by people who are, let's see, I think the largest age difference right now is 17 years. So like they're thinking, I get a lot of grandpa vibes, so don't dare complain about my back. And they're basically saying, look, if it's not streaming, I'm not really interested. So yeah, but you have this current generation who, great, we're kind of you dragged me into this now, that just don't see the point of even getting physical media anymore. And
right, physical media is really struggling at this point. It has become more and more of a niche market.
It's all about steel books.
Yeah, steel books.
I mean, iTunes has really gotten good, like on extra features for anything made in the last 5 years.
Right.
You're going to save money, save space. So Steve Jobs' ghost is to blame for all this, is what I'm saying.
Well, maybe. There appear to be worries that the Warner Archive burn-on-demand service is going to be shut down.
Well, and you have TCM on HBO Max, so it might not be a total loss.
Well, it is a total loss if you're looking
for physical media.
Warner Archive was handling.
Right. I understand that, but I'm just saying this isn't me looking for streaming services showing Albert Pion's Heat Seeker.
Right.
These movies have a place.
Right. And on the whole, so if you bring up the issue of curation, though, you get complaints from people saying it's gatekeeping in the sense that it only wants the films traditionally thought of as the American and to a lesser extent international film canon to be appreciated, and that there's a stereotype that all those has sprung up, that all those works are about old white guys and are really racist and sexist to down to the last minute, and that modern cinema, including the Marvel movies, is much more racially and diverse and socially experimental.
Well,
that in and of itself isn't entirely true.
Well, I could actually comment on this recently. I've got myself into a little Twitter spat with some. I think they might have a podcast on Twitter, and I'm not afraid to mention them. I mean, heck, could create a dialogue. Grandest stage of all, AEW, WWE. I don't know their handle, but they were complaining about the owner of AEW, Tony Khan, announcing that on Bleacher Report Live, they're going to feature the semi-final match in the women's U.S. side of the title eliminator tournament on BR Live, Bleacher Report Live. And they were complaining about, no, this should be on TNT Wednesday night. And I'm saying, no, I think this is a good call because the two wrestlers they have are excellent. It doesn't matter what their gender is. I'm just sold on trying to find this online match. And, that's how you sell things, is basically that you put the best thing you have out there. So regardless, sex in wrestling is, I tried saying it like, look, there aren't the women, you think they deserve an hour, half the time, equal time, when there isn't an equal amount of wrestlers. And it's and I didn't go too deep into it, it's a very chaotic society on the independent scene where a promotion is just happy to get one female wrestler, and then they'll just find girls willing to wrestle her. And it's very, heck, there was the speaking out movement in the summer, which is basically Wrestling Me Too, about how certain guys treated women who are trying to make a name for themselves in the business. So, I'm just saying, like, okay, look, women are getting a showcase. Don't complain about it. And if there were more women, they deserve more time. If they were better wrestlers. Now that might get me in some hot water, but again, there's just not the talent pool. So I'm just saying, like, don't complain about this. Don't complain about this. This is what it is. It will get better. And no, people want this change now, or they want to feel like they are a cultural warrior. It's very much like Obama said, that you just can't be a keyboard activist. And I think that's what a lot of this film Twitter stuff you're talking about is. Were all the movies from before 1975 pretty racist and sexist? Yeah, I will. I'm just gonna say, as You Only Live Twice as being one of my favorite Bond movies, and that's probably the most racist Bond movie. Yeah, there's just, it's society, and you do have to. I'm all about putting warnings or cultural reference before the feature. So I'm on the side of, but it's art, and regardless of what the story is, that's why we do remakes. That's why we fix things going forward. You can't go back, which I think is the big problem. Pardon that long rant.
Well, that the problem is that the notion that people who like old movies are gatekeepers who don't appreciate the problematic aspects of these films is completely untrue.
Right.
And
I just stated that. I mean, I know plenty of people though who will say, "Oh, you don't like old cinema," and then, "Oh, yeah, we shouldn't be telling people that. Oh, just watch it and accept it for what it is."
right.
I think we do need these warnings. In other words, I want to see Song of the South again. Put a warning on it. I want to see it.
But it speaks to a lot of these younger audiences not realizing that we are already working on that with problematic works, and also making more of an effort to get the canon expanded. Last year, there was a discussion in the New York Times of how the Criterion Collection has been kind of skewed over the years to white American and European directors. And while Asian cinema's fairly well depicted, not necessarily Southeast Asian cinema, and there's still a lack of black film and female filmmakers who have been included in the physical media releases.
Okay, there's no question about that. Yes.
However, we are already starting to see some change with stuff like Criterion Channel, which is the streaming service that rose out of the ashes of the Filmstruck service that they were running at TCM.
Mm-hmm.
I've decided to take the plunge and subscribe to that service for at least a year. I signed up a few weeks ago.
You signed up for the year then?
And yeah.
Okay.
It's $99 for a year, $99.99 for a full year.
Yeah, so you're saving probably.
Yeah, it's $11 a month. So there is.
Okay, that's quite a deal. You're okay.
Yeah, it's a deal. And the thing about Criterion Channel I've found is that they are making a real effort to focus on smaller filmmakers, women, non-white filmmakers, and international scene more than they can with the physical releases so far. Okay. Not all the movies that have had physical Criterion releases are on Criterion Channel. That's partially because of the deals that, say, HBO Max has with Turner Classic Movies, and that there are some titles that they have to share. But what they do have is a lot of stuff that isn't turning up on streaming services anyway. They have a lot of collections.
Yeah.
Talking about curating stuff. And these include shorts and films. And sometimes they do have to rotate movies in and out of them. Like they only have certain titles. Like last October, they did a big 70s horror retrospective. And some of the movies they included in that were only temporary, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78. Mm-hmm. But a bunch of titles they still have around. They still have listing up, and they still have 18 of the movies they featured, and those include Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Season of the Witch, The Wicker Man, some of Cronenberg's early features.
Okay, I was about to say, I mean, what, I binged Shivers last night for nothing?
Yeah, they've got that one. And so they'll keep some of these collections around, even if they can't keep all the titles at a time. Mm-hmm. But some of the other titles they have right now are Afrofuturism, cool. Australian New Wave.
Yeah, I think a little overrated, but I'm sorry. I think it was listening to the what was the pod? It had Dave Holmes as one of the hosts. Uh-huh. It was on one of the guests. It was Screen Drafts. Fictitious Bands.
Yeah.
And the Australian film Starstruck, or
yes, that's a good film.
Okay, yes, no, he was raving about it and doing his damnedest to get everybody to watch it.
It
And it made that list.
yeah.
Spinal Tap was way too low. I mean, so was probably Inside Llewellyn Day. I mean, it's a pretty good list. Very white. They could have just thrown and Fear of a Black Hat in to fix that, but
I don't know. That owes so much to Spinal Tap conceptually. I can see why it would have felt a little redundant.
all right, it was on Screen Picks recently, so it's like, and I have an old VHS from Second Cinema of that, so
Yeah,
it's close to my heart.
right. No, it's a good film.
Yeah.
But anyway, some of the other collections Criterion has right now is new Korean cinema,
Oh, awesome.
like Save the Green Planet, Tale of Two Sisters.
I imagine some of the more aggressive stuff. I'm not saying I Saw the Devil, but think featuring the guy from Old Boy kind of stuff. Well, or maybe I'm just very narrow on my Korean cinema. I still haven't watched Parasite yet.
But other collections they have include, they have a lot of fun coming up with some of these collections. They do ones that are by actor or director, as you might expect.
Right.
Like this month, they have a program of Cary Grant comedies, a run through of Mae West's work, and the Peter Sellers retrospective, because they got the streaming rights to a documentary about one of his films.
Okay.
And exclusive rights, so they decided they'd also do a little season. And they, on top of that, most of the films they got for it are the 1950s and 60s films he did in England that aren't as well known in this country. Yeah, right. Including one that was nearly lost for many years, Mr. Topaz, which is the only movie he officially directed.
Huh.
That's pretty significant. And Criterion also has a lot of shorts, which are often included in the collections, like the Afrofuturism collection has both short films and features.
Right.
And Criterion Channel also finally broke one of the biggest blind spots that the physical releases have, is that they can finally do animation in some depth.
Okay, so beyond just Fantastic Planet.
Yeah, way beyond that in some cases, because they get a lot of shorts. Like they did a Bill Plimpton retrospective, working through a lot of his shorts and features. They've done John and Faith Hubley, who are two of the biggest indie animators of the 1960s. And that leads up to another thing, and I think this gets us closer to what I want to tackle here, is they have a collection that they expand on with a new film each week called the Saturday Matinees Collection. Saturday Matinees, let's see if I can pull it up here on my computer. It takes a minute because they kind of bury it at the bottom of the big list, but Saturday Matinees is specifically aimed at families and children. But the films they feature aren't necessarily the ones you think of first. What they have, some of them are titles that are in the physical collection, and some of them aren't. Again, some of them rotate in and out. But they've included a lot of silent comedies, including several of Chaplin's features, Safety Last, which is Harold Lloyd's most famous film. So they have some Buster Keaton. They've also included films about children, or that heavily involve them, like the David Lean version of Great Expectations, several of Sabu's vehicles from the 1940s. They've included a lot of films that kids of older generations grew up with in one way or another, like the original version of The Blob.
All right, yeah, Stephen Quinn's debut.
Yep.
You say Sabu though, and I'm thinking I didn't know the homicidal, genocidal, suicidal maniac was around in the 40s.
Oh,
cheap joke. I mean, I'm trying to win wrestling fans over.
Okay.
Okay.
They have Godzilla 54 and Destroy All Monsters.
Ah,
Of course, being kind of an offshoot of the big box set they did in the physical.
right.
And they've had several animated features, mostly foreign ones. They have Watership Down.
Ah,
Yeah.
haven't
Which
had
is
the nerve to watch that one. I don't know what it is. Bunnies, I just don't like getting evil.
No, I think Watership Down is excellent.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying. Yeah, leave the
They
evil.
have some of the French animator Michel Ocelot's Kirikou films, which are adaptations of African folk tales,
Oh.
which are very, very nicely made. And keeping in with your 90 for chill concept, a lot of these movies are well under 90 minutes. Like older movies like your Silence or your Ray Harryhausen effects movie.
I mean, half the time when you talk about Ray Harryhausen, it's like, could they really afford to do 2 hours?
In a sense, no.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know if you still have more to go and say about this generational issue that we are obviously not going to resolve with this. I mean, it's a good conversation to be had that, all right, there's a generation or 2 generations, Gen Z probably wants to be even more aggressive than the millennials, or at least that was
It could be.
big social media thing I had, like millennials with their hipster parts down their hair.
Yeah.
Gen Z saying, no, you can't have that. And then the millennials, well, I'm going to part it even harder. So,
right. But
a bunch of white kids looking for identity. There, I said.
But what's interesting is that this whole program mixes up these kind of movies along with, like, they've had Marx Brothers movies, they've had early Abbott and Costello, they have the film adaptation of Pygmalion.
Ooh.
Because, from the 1930s.
Well, I'm campaigning that
some 70s British
festival.
They have the Railway Children from 1970, which was one of the biggest British children's films of that era, and is as big as any for that culture as anything of the Disney movies of that period would be for us. And some of the more recent ones they added included, they got The Last Unicorn up on streaming. I don't know if that was available on streaming before.
Maybe Netflix had it, but I mean, that again, we're talking years ago when I was working primarily second shifts and could stay up drunkenly watching Netflix for till 5-6 a.m. in the morning. The good old.
And that's going to the fact that kids up through the 90s saw so many of these movies, or could have found them with a little effort if it was on cable or VHS. Because you remember how Nickelodeon or Disney Channel build their schedules out with all sorts of stuff, like The Red Balloon, which is also in this collection.
I'm really looking for Unico myself.
Unico, I think those 2 films are available on Tubi, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's the original. It's the original dubs too.
Well, okay. With that said, how much live television are you really or live television, or dare I say, DVR television are you watching now, or have you pretty much gone to a streaming diet?
I don't really watch any live television at all at this point, or wait for it on streaming, really. I just haven't been as interested in that kind of long format right now.
Oh no, I totally get that, but
I'm more focused on movies. So
right, no, and that's actually something I wanted to address. So Netflix, you can't get mad at me because I'm paying for the extra screens access, but are we really using Netflix that much?
I don't use it that often. They just don't have enough of a movie selection going on.
That's where I am too. So I better just ask mom if she, because Rand showed mom some Enola Holmes, and it's like, all right, I better see if mom's keeping track of that.
Well, it's up to you guys. It doesn't matter much to me.
Well,
It,
I mean, I'm the only one paying for it. Jeez.
right. It's up to you.
Yeah, so maybe. Yeah, so I'll just have to make sure with mom. So I mean, I'll probably be back for Stranger Things 4. But that's just it. It's not I'm there for the mood. I'm not I mean, things are shaping up. I don't have to watch Tiger King. I did watch Tiger King. I enjoyed Tiger King. It was great seeing Joel McHale do do the reunion special. But I'm still upset about Joel McHale and oh my gosh, who did the she had a weekly show on Netflix. Ginger was a writer on Seth Meyers. Shoot, hosted the last press White House press corps. See what you did,
I don't know.
Netflix? I definitely need to save that $13 a month. All right, but anyway, so is there anything more to address with the dialogue on film Twitter, hashtag film Twitter, in regards to this? I mean, it sounds pretty nasty because everything on the internet's nasty. Do not read the comments sections. That is the only reason well, exploding bunnies, but otherwise, the reminder not to read the comments section is the primary reason to watch Ralph Breaks the Internet. You have to remember that.
Right. I don't think there's much more to be said about the current state of this debate in particular. Not right now, anyway. But it does bring me to the fact that there are so many interesting older movies people could be checking out and giving a chance to if they put in a little more effort. But on the other side of the coin, and this was really what Scorsese was talking about, the corporations that have the rights to these movies could be working on that too, hiring people who can curate collections and get the best material out there.
Okay. Well, as the one hoping for the communist ideal at some point in this country, I don't put much pressure on corporations to change the structure and the format. Like with wrestling, it's okay, there's not enough women right now. And then you have with AEW, they hired, so they've got so much great male talent, which is hyped up when they hired them, that okay, why can't we get them on that show? And I don't want to say it's because of the women's segment, because we do need because they've got great women wrestling, but you can't expand one if you can't expand the other, basically.
Right.
And I don't blame corporations for just appeasing the masses. And sadly, you have the issue being, and this comes back to I don't want to mom basically being in the club of calling Comcast up in Peoria area because it didn't work in Champaign to get TCM back on the cable line. Like it's basically something that I don't know. I don't really know. It's just basically, you gotta, if it's not a problem to your bottom line, you don't have to worry about fixing it. I mean, they're not supposed to be about the culture. I mean, they're supposed to be about making money, sadly. I really wish we had, it's all about how you start your business, really. If you can go and start making changes culturally. if you're dedicated to making, to listening to, sadly, minorities, at least opinion wise, or definitely silent minorities, or it could be a silent majority. It gets nuts. Now we're getting into, why we're gonna have to worry about Trump in 4 years. But I'm just saying, like, I really wish that there was a way to change things, to motivate to change things. But if the numbers are looking a certain way, why would you gamble on changing it just because you have the money? Sadly, we're in a speculative economic system. Look at GameStop, where you don't, and look at the fact that everything is a franchise, everything is being remade. You got to go with guarantees.
Wow.
With that said, if we'd all just go to socialism and work towards a communist ideal, which is what Star Trek is all about, if we just put our heads together and accept that, where the aliens invasion to force our hands, we can get to that. A perfect world, Scorsese's wishes would be recognized. It ain't perfect.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to discuss? I know we haven't focused as much on individual titles this week.
Well, and I think we're gonna have to. Obviously, I think we're gonna have to bring it back to that. But it gives me some thoughts about film history, honestly. So I know I don't exactly have a collection that is has a lot of history to it, dare I say. Oldest movie I have is Pandora's Box by Warner Paps.
Right.
And I still haven't gotten around to really sitting down and watching it.
Yeah, and that wouldn't fit your 90 for chill parameter anyway.
Right, which is actually something I'm getting to. It's like when you look at films like Philadelphia Story, which I've seen most of, and I kind of like, okay, you could definitely tell this is a play because nobody's speaking over each other and such.
Right.
Dialogue and such. Then I could even say that with Casablanca, which just barely misses 90 for chill.
Yeah.
But obviously I'm not gonna bring up Citizen Kane because that definitely doesn't make it. I kind of find that in history that there's a period where, if it wasn't really original content, and a lot of it is just play adaptations.
Yes, in the early days of talkies.
Right. People were still used to going to the theater and getting up and have a smoke and a cocktail halfway through.
Right.
And I think we kind of, by the 70s, we definitely lost the intermission in movies.
Yeah, more or less.
Right. So, but I'm just saying that explains longer run. What I'm trying to do is I'm saying that explains longer run times. It's not about people having more attention. It's just they were used to it.
Yeah.
And there's also the opportunity for a smoke and a cocktail, which maybe that's the next money-making scam. All right, if you can get $40,000 together, we can reopen the art theater in Champaign, and then we stop every movie before the third, before the second act. Okay, cocktail and smoke break.
I'm thinking, if you want to look into older movies, there's probably something out there that will appeal to you if you're willing to do a little work, and it fits the 90 for chill parameters. If you want to
don't worry about that. I can definitely. I'm one to put the effort into. I'm saying that we've got at least one generation. I'm not going to blame both Gen Z and millennials. We got at least one generation that just doesn't want to take the time, and I think that's why long form is actually really coming back, honestly. I.e., a lot of Bridgerton fans, a lot of Queen's Gambit, and hey, as long as it keeps them away from murder porn. That's pretty much all I hear about at the bank is murder porn or long form art. But I'm just saying that it's going so far back. A lot of it, honestly, my collection is based on assignments from my 2 film classes.
Right.
And,
that's how some people get into it, and that's fine.
Right. And so what I'm primarily getting at is why I don't have a lot. I can really add at least 90 for chill wise right now. What I'm really perplexed is Doctor Strangelove, which that one is neither racist or sexist, my opinion. Okay, lacks female characters, but that is does qualify for 90 for chill. And I'm not gonna. It's definitely probably Kubrick's. I'll venture to say 3rd best film.
It's up there.
Which makes me wonder, and I mean, it's the credit to him as a director. Now, I'm not a Shining fan. I can definitely. Right. I think Ready Player One did a better work The Shining than Kubrick did.
But a lot of Kubrick's early films are pretty short up through Doctor Strangelove.
Well, Lolita is a good 2 hours.
Lolita's the one exception.
Okay, because I just had a feeling that what was the one? Well, Spartacus sounds like it's going to be long.
Yeah, Spartacus is a 3-hour epic, but that's more of a work for hire thing anyway.
Okay, then there's also what was his World War I with Michael Douglas?
That's Glory.
Kirk Douglas.
With Kirk Douglas, yeah. It does fit 90 for chill.
Okay, well, I really got to get around to that. But I'm saying the beauty of Kubrick, though, is I didn't realize when I watched Barry Lyndon, I didn't realize it didn't feel like 3 hours.
It's a very fast moving for a 3-hour movie. I was expecting to break it up over 2 days, but.
And even go back to Clockwork, I don't think that does not feel like a 2-hour movie.
No, he was very good at pacing his movies. Not everyone is.
I have a copy. I have not watched it. 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I know, that's so many distinct acts.
Right.
It kind of feels like a task.
I really had a problem with 2001, to be honest. I first saw that when I was about, I think, 16, and I didn't have any problems with it.
Okay.
That was when I really getting outside of what I'd been watching up to that point, and making choices on my own.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the biggest problem with your film Twitter debacle, is that people are so concerned about fixing things that they're not trying to speak from their own identity or come up with one.
Right.
And
that's part of it.
Yeah.
Have people, it's one thing to have people who can be obsessive about certain filmmakers or actors. It's another when they're showing this kind of loyalty to corporations, which is part of why the discourse around Scorsese can get so toxic, is because you have a lot of people who want to defend a major corporation against
right. Yeah, just because they're being social, they're recognizing societal changes. No, they're not. They're just profiting off you, and they're doing it to solely make a buck. That's why, again, going back to my wrestling argument, no. I mean, if you can show that they're going to make more money by putting women's wrestling on, they'll do it. But it's not a sincere effort.
And on top of that, so many of the Marvel discourse, some of it I'm sure is trolling.
Oh.
But they would always say that Scorsese only makes movies about old white Italian mobsters, or at least old white Italian men.
Okay, now.
Now, you know and I know that isn't true.
Well, and I know that a lot of Italians don't consider themselves to be white. So,
Right.
where's your sense
Right.
of there?
It's brought up too, but yeah,
I think they're white, but that's but I understand people are proud of their cultures. I mean, you know, and I'm surprised that the Irish hasn't taken a chance to say, well, we're the palest of them all. We're the best white. You know? But I don't know, white's a weird thing anyhow, because in Brazil, where we would definitely say they're all Latin, they would just consider themselves white. I mean, you know, whatever the lightest skin tone gets to be white, basically, in most societies. But I will digress before I insert foot further down throat. But yeah, what really the answer is, obviously we need to start teaching film for a semester in high school. But
that's a whole issue in and of itself, how arts education is supposed to work in a country that's having hard enough time with the 3 R's and has for a long time. Arts education just isn't what it used to be.
Right. And as far as I'm concerned, arts education has never been in this country. But I digress. I mean, we're in a, like, they do it better in Europe. If you can't play great football by 14, get into acting.
So, talking about older movies people could look into that fit the 90 for chill parameters and are fun. People like science fiction, horror, and fantasy movies, and there were plenty of those.
Oh, well, you know, I haven't really dove too much into 50s, but Silent Running, I can't remember where I ranked it on my top 10 discoveries. I think it may have been 3 from 2020, is excellent.
Yeah, that movie has a serious reputation these days.
Maybe a little too much Joan Baez for my taste, but
yeah,
if that's and hell, Dark Star.
Yeah, the post 2001 pre Star Wars era of sci-fi gets really interesting.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, hell, I have not taken the time to watch Logan's Run from beginning to end, but
that's considered one of the weaker ones. That's considered relatively weak even at the time.
Well, the point is, I've referenced that in probably my most prolific satire piece. 40 years is enough.
Yeah.
And it gets popped up in a bunch of my screenplays before. My low budget, why the hell hasn't this been green? Why the hell hasn't people volunteered to help me get this greenlit screenplay about pro wrestling zombies, Main Event of the Dead? Send emails to rustthebus07 with requests, rustthebus07@gmail.com with requests for treatment and or advice on how to get out of developmental hell. Okay, sorry, plug.
But you go back to the 1930s, you have the Universal cycle, which was pretty wide and deep. It became the original shared universe by the end of the main run.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, you see a universal monster. You know, there's something behind it.
Yeah,
and I don't think anybody will argue that, except these little twats on Twitter that you're talking about. But I digress. You're the reason why Tom Cruise's mummy sucked, is what I'm telling those little buggers.
In any case, then you move on to the 1940s. There's the films Val Lewton supervised at RKO, such as Cat People and The Body Snatcher, which is an excellent Boris Karloff vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Then you get to the 1950s. You have the great B-movie sci-fi run that includes a lot of films that did get good remakes later, but are still worthwhile, like the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to get to Incredible
Shrink from another world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fun period. And The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right, which everybody was wondering why that didn't make it on Screen Draft's aquatic horror. But hey, Dagon did. So, and why are our mermaids so why? Damn Disney for making mermaids so peaceful. They are sirens. They gotta eat.
Thinking about other genres.
We don't see Ariel and Titan, King Titan eating any fish. You're telling me they're kelp lovers? Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to other genres. A lot of 1930s comedies are relatively short and fun. You can
I
choose
do recall that. Yeah.
Marx Brothers.
Well, Charlie Chaplin.
Late period Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
The late Charlie Chaplin Silence.
Right.
Laurel and Hardy did some good work. And if you are in a real bind, a lot of these guys did lots of shorts that are fun. Like they're about 20-minute two reel shorts that are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's another real change, is that kids don't grow up with the Three Stooges the way they used to.
Well, I blame the Farrelly brothers for that. Take his Oscar away.
And Mae West and W.C. Fields, and they all did stuff that was under 90 minutes and is a lot of fun to watch.
Right. I'm just doing a little research if we're talking Angels with Dirty. Oh, there we go. And Angels with Dirty Faces. I mean, that's the actually the movie that kind of put me in got the first respect from ICC's, Illinois Central College's film experts, that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Doing a comparison of Angels with Dirty Faces to Ernest Dickerson's Juice.
Right. Now that's interesting, and that's part of another reason.
Really just bringing up James Cagney because he's freaking James Cagney. You're definitely going to find stuff with him. Yeah. I mean, he was a movie star, not necessarily a play. Jimmy Stewart. Right. I think a lot of that is also the fact that some of the deliberation is just because, you didn't have movie stars for a while, for the first, unless you had your, Little Tramps, your Buster Keatons and such.
But there were some huge. Part of the problem with silent movies, and they pointed this out on The Critic even, is that a lot of the really big names of silent cinema, and there were more than you might think, a lot of work just got lost.
Yes.
Film preservation didn't become a thing for a long time. Like Theda Barrow, who's one of the bigger stars of the 20s, she was known for her vamp characters. That was a whole subgenre of melodrama, were vamp pictures. Only one or two of her movies survive now. That's how bad early film was kept up and preserved. Hey, so there were stars back then.
Yeah, it allowed Eli Roth to kill Hitler. So sorry, I know you probably haven't seen Inglourious Basterds.
That movie stars didn't exist that early on. It's just that a lot of their work, the work of, didn't survive.
Well, I'm just going into the fact that we had an issue with theater actors initially I guess it comes to more of the grand efforts of DeVille. So, well, looking at Sign of the Cross, I think it was, a lot of these theater actors just not translating over, and it took a while before you had your Cagneys and such to.
Yeah, it does. There is that transitional period at the turn of the 30s where they are clear, the end of the 20s, early 30s, where they are struggling to figure out who's going to work and who isn't. Because it was important to import theater talent because at least the people wouldn't laugh at their voices.
Okay, yeah.
This is poked fun at when they made that joke on The Critic that the one guy, his career failed because he didn't photograph well in color. But a lot of actual silent movie stars like John Gilbert, they simply didn't have voice. They simply had voices that didn't really match their image, so they didn't transition well to talkies. So they started importing more theater talent at that point. It's a famous transitional period.
All right.
But those are just a few examples that you can get into older movies. And you do have to deal with problematic elements in a lot of them. But
well, that brings up Shivers. Oh, the rapiness of that movie. I mean, I think it could be remade. It's just I don't see. I just don't see how we can do it without all the rapiness.
You have to deal with how things change, and you do have to see them in context, but also admit that stuff's not okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I should be allowed to see Disney Plus should have Song of the South on it.
I think Song of the South is a special case because that's a more specifically wounding film for a lot of people.
Well, I don't know, because I think it's really, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think it's just the first one where he really pointed out. I mean, everybody just accepted Gone with the Wind as a classic. And no, that's some Uncle Tom stuff right there, if I'm using the term correctly. Slavery ain't that bad.
But you have to work on, and this is how you also work on expanding the canon and unearthing other films that can go alongside the more popular titles. And then you have it's just healthier for everyone if you approach it that way. That you can have all these different works in a sort of conversation with each other and see how they evolve. And while it's easy to say you can just remake things and make them less problematic.
Oh, no. No, you can't. You're missing. You try to remake something which has something like, I'm not saying the main element of Gone with the Wind was whitewashing slavery.
Right.
But no, you have to keep that base, I think. Now you can go and explore it better. It's a daring thing, though, and most people don't want to dare.
Right. It's easier to strike out on your own and find other ways to explore the kind of material you're not comfortable with.
You're right.
I can't remember who said it. It might have been Jean-Luc Godard. But the best way to critique a movie is to make another movie.
Yes. No, that's absolutely correct. And maybe that's what we need from the Marvel universe, which is currently infallible. Now they could have their poorly marketed Solo moment. Solo's a good movie. No, I mean, most people say yeah, that was all just people fearing that it's going to be a shit film. But I'm just saying, they get the chance to be daring. I don't know. It's not going to be the end of the franchise. I mean, Star Wars is going to come back stronger than ever once they get back to the big screen after The Mandalorian.
We'll see.
Hey! Star Wars is going back to its glory after The Mandalorian. Sorry to Homer Simpson you there. I'm just saying, there's, aside from Black Panther, which just has to go and deal with the issues straight on, there hasn't been any daringness in the Marvel universe. Is what I'm saying.
Right. Now, is there anything else you want to add? Because we've been going on for a while. I think you've got enough for a full episode.
Well, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, I did some work, but it's more about just me putting the work in, trying to find, pretty much get any kind of 75. I mean, not movie that qualifies for my website mentioned. I mean, Shivers is like just brilliant horror because of it's pre-Carpenter stuff. Definitely. I'm kind of disappointed that Stuart Gordon didn't have really. I think he only had a production of Bleacher Bums, which makes him even cooler. Talking about the Cubbies. Before 1980. I did watch Lady Snowblood, which is a big influence on Tarantino, obviously. I mean, it pretty much is Kill Bill. Now, Tarantino really was able to expand on that. But, it goes back to, I think, 70s and how it's just because the attitude was, let's just get it made. And I think that is something that this current generation is missing. I mean, anybody who gets something made right now is a name established.
Right.
Nobody's Jordan Peele, yeah, he wasn't, he had a successful TV show. Keanu is a kitten classic. But he did have some, he wasn't somebody unknown, somebody that Blumhouse doesn't take chances. They know exactly what they're doing. I think that's really what I'm getting. What's coming to my head is that I think with cinema now, we have to have these. If you want to change the corporate structure of everything, we have to go back to filmmakers who are just going to make films. And most of them will probably fit in the 90 for chill time slot because of that. Because they're not going to have the money. They're not going to have the resources. But we can still just make movies, I think. And
no, if you,
I'm sorry?
well, if you say so.
Well, it's especially with all these streaming services now. If you can get on Shudder, you'll eventually get it to a studio deal, I think. Or you can be happy with being on Shudder. And but if you're really great on Shudder, Criterion will come looking for you. And that is, I think, the strength of the Criterion collection. It's still going to make sure the best things are recognized.
Right.
So, basically, again, a pitch for Main Event of the Dead, I suppose, but somebody's got something on their mind, something that can be done. Look, James Gunn came from Romeo to Juliet to Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's start. Not necessarily. Really, it is just like if somebody's got some idea, why not gamble on them? I'm gambling on the frickin' Flyers for because I like the Flyers. Have a little faith. Newcastle is going to eventually get me that 100 to 1 bet that I keep putting on them. Let's take some chances where there's definitely. We're not gonna get too many masterpieces supposedly, but we're going to, we just got to start making our own stuff again, I suppose. And there's definitely a way to work around the corporations on that. And I don't know. I think it really just comes down to with this current generation. I'm just going to call them out on it. They are lazy. That comes from a guy who can win about any fight he finds himself in, at least from a physical standpoint. But, I don't think a lot of people want things to change. I think, sadly, we're coming back to another 80s, I guess. Or we loved the 2010s so much, and the instant gratification that were the Marvel movies and the Star Wars sequels that we just don't. We just know we know there's good. We know there's stuff that's going to amuse us. So why bother?
Right.
No, we gotta start bothering. Like, I hated Jurassic World. Um, More about the fact that it's aliens, predator. The Tyrannosaurus gets to the frickin' chopper in the end. I mean, Predator, aliens, Westworld. I mean, all of that. And like, oh, you'll eat it up. But it's like, there's 3 good movies you could have seen, and 2 of them could have probably fit in the time frame of frickin' Jurassic World. That's a little hyperbole because obviously I know the run times, but um, I don't know. The only way to otherwise change it is to take money away from the corporations, and you don't want a pissed off company that's not making money. They got a lot of money and they're going to be bitter about it.
Right.
So they're going to double down and you're going to like it. So another solution is also to just give Jeff Goldblum his own studio where he has to star in every movie.
That would be interesting.
Okay, see, now I got you bored again. Okay, but did you end up watching any movies, or did you just want to really just tell people that, hey, the best stuff is behind us, unfortunately?
I don't think the best stuff is behind us. That's a hopeless way of looking at it. But we have to put in an effort to bring the best stuff into being. And that's going to take a lot of work. I know there's a lot of good cinema out there. It's just getting very hard to cut through the clutter at the moment with the big content hoses all these streaming services or on-demand services are bringing out. I have to wait for my movies to mellow at this point. But I know there's good material out there. We shouldn't be completely hopeless.
I don't know. It's making me feel like we got to figure a way to kill Tony Stark again. I mean, I guess that's just an attitude of mine. It's a lot of the people question, like, I live in a college town, and a lot of people question, like, how do you score higher on the leftist thing while you preach politics? Because good things take work. I mean, you can't convince. Well, I mean, I'm in Illinois, which the people are the salt of the earth, common full farmers. You know.
Anyway.
Which reminds me, that's something I wanted to bring up because I was trying to get you to go and pull the Mel Brooks there. Mel Brooks' comedy was all pretty brief in the 70s, the exception of, and we're only talking a few minutes, Young Frankenstein, which, I don't know. I will argue The Producers was his best.
That's a pretty strong argument people have made for The Producers. I think the films in 74 are kind of his high watermark, especially when you put them together.
Oh, the sheer ambition of those films. But this leads me to say, like, okay, we had all these pretty quick, brief comedies. I mean, you had the exceptions, like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World back in the 60s.
Yeah. Comedy doesn't lend itself well to extended runtimes.
Right, and which is what I'm getting at. But then you had Animal House. And John Landis knocks out of the part. I'm not going to even get into the problematic stuff of that. I could have taken 15 minutes off of that. True. I don't think it's as nasty as people say it is. I'm also somebody who says Revenge of the Nerds ages well because the word is revenge. I Spit on Your Grave is about the brutality expanded upon. But John Landis has success with Animal House, and his next big success wasn't initially a success. I think it aged better. The Blues Brothers. I didn't realize that was 2 hours 10 minutes. And then
it was a big hit at the time, but its reputation has only gone up over the years.
Right.
It was a substantial hit.
But what I'm getting at then you think John Landis, you think his next big movie, you don't think Spies Like Us, which does fit 90 for chill. You think Trading Places, and you think Coming to America. I'm basically blaming John Landis for making comedies too long.
I don't know.
Ghostbusters is probably a 3-hour movie if you go and put all the stuff that they had to cut. I wanted more continuity to raise BJ. More background. So that's really all I've got out of my when you told me about wanting to do pre-70s movie, pre-80s movies, is like kind of how the 80s sucked, I guess, by making just going into this big blockbuster stuff. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at. Otherwise, you had classics from the 60s, Night of the Living Dead, another paper that got me more reputation as Illinois Central College's film expert. How important Sidney Lumet's work was, primarily 12 Angry Men, is a movie that should be shown after every trial where, people might get pissed. It's better. It would be better to jump to Henry Fonda than to frickin' Nancy Grace when we got a controversial court decision. But I think that really covers all I've got. So thank you very much, Rory. You are the poetic critic. That is the poetic critic on Letterboxd. I'm kind of curious because we've obviously been talking about Twitter, what your Twitter account is, but if you want to withhold that, I totally understand. You can find me at all of my work writing wise is at maineventofthedead.com. You might get directed to other subblogs of mine, Disgruntled Real Championship Wrestling, or anime, remnants of anime, which I can actually say till I watched Shivers, I had a pretty big Japanese week watching an anime called Cat Planet Cuties, which harkens back to Tenchi Muyo and El Hazard, in my opinion. So might not be up your alley, Rory, but
I don't know. I'm gonna bring up my Letterboxd thing here and get refreshed on what I watched this week because I was pretty busy.
Well, I also watched The Craft this week, and it's like, if you really wanted to appease girls of that age, why didn't you make it a musical as well? Because you didn't have the clever dialogue to make it clueless with witches.
Yeah.
Granted, it did give us another slacker Breckin Meyer.
Looking at some of the stuff I did watch this past week that fits 90 for chill, I was looking through some old Peter Sellers movies. If you like, I only stumbled upon it, but Tubi had like his first feature, Penny Points to Paradise, and I thought that was a lost film. But they had it, and it was in pretty good condition too. So I guess there had to have been a restoration at some point, and that would fit 90 for chill. What other standouts? Most of the others wouldn't fit 90 for chill that I watched.
Well, the craft wouldn't count by 1 minute.
I was watching Nashville the other night. And that's way too big for 90 for chill.
Yeah, it honestly, I hear so many great things about that one. I'm kind of intimidated.
Well, it was a revisit for me. It's not as intimidating as it sounds. It holds together very. It is a lot to take in, but it's pretty easy to follow, all things considered, because the characters are distinct enough. And also keep in mind that about an hour of the movie is just musical performances.
Well, that's not a really great selling point for me. But
no, it's very well made.
Okay.
I think you should give it a try if you're interested.
Like saying watch Scorsese's New York, New York. Nobody questions the direction of that movie. They question everything else.
No, Nashville is, it does help if you're already into alt.
Well, honestly, you see one Altman, how are you not going to be into Altman?
That's one way of looking at it. But yeah, Nashville is not as daunting to get into as it might seem from the outset.
Okay.
It hangs together really well.
All right. So, okay. Of course, you can find 90forchill.com, the podcast at 90forchill. Honestly, this podcast is kind of shortening my movie reviewing, but really how much sadly the written word is dying.
I think that's it then.
Yeah, I can't really think of too much. Again, I can harass people to send me support for Main of the Dead because we need to make our own stuff. Screw the corporations. That's the message of this podcast. The most socialist episode ever. Sorry. At rustthebus07@gmail.com. Otherwise, I have nothing. Thank you very much, Roy, for taking the time.
I'll follow up with you on Facebook in a minute.
Okay, sorry that
Okay.
Sorry that I didn't give you that. I realized that as long as it's only 2 people, Zoom don't cost anything.
Well, we'll see if we cross our paths again this way. And I'll talk to you.
I mean, I might. It's my birthday week, so I'll probably be around Peoria at some point.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you later, Roy.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye.
Now available on video cassette.
Separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
The time's roll. No! You might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We'll give him a week, see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I don't want to kill.
He makes you kill tonight.
And they all belong to the night.
It's 3 hours short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What are you on?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Evening.
Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of time.
You nervous?
I would be too if I were you. Near dark.
It'll be your boys falling in with control. Check out time.
Bought yourself some time, son.
God damn, this is my family. Let him go.
Near dark. Pray for daylight. The night has its price.
And welcome back to 90 for Chill, the podcast. This is your host, Cool Movies Darth. That would be CM Darth on Letterboxd, better known as Russ Stevens. I think Mom and Dad appreciate me getting that name out there. Then Mom looks at the bumper stickers on my car and might change her mind, but I digress. And this week we're just going to go and see what happens with the Poetic Critic on Letterboxd. That's The Poetic Critic, all one word, correct?
Yes.
All right. And, me, waiting for the Spiral DVD / Blu-ray release so I can drop that episode then. I've been trying to get people to get aboard a vampire episode, but despite everybody liking it on Facebook, giving me those little heart icons on Twitter, nobody's stepping up for it. It's a little frustrating, so we're just going to see what's happening with Rory here. Neither of us really pay much attention to cable anymore, I believe.
No, not really.
Let's see. She's supplying the Disney Plus. I'm supplying the HBO Max. I don't know. Maybe my Fire Stick up in the kids' bedroom, the grandkids' bedroom, the guest room, what have you, might let me access the Criterion channel, but I doubt I can pop that code at home. But, when you spend $100 on a service, I can understand you're not sharing that password.
Right.
Okay. But with that said, though, I just got an advertisement on YouTube yesterday saying HBO Max now has tiers. Basically, you can, for $10, you can just deal with advertisements. I'm just used to paying $15 for HBO Max, so I don't really see myself decreasing to a lower tier. What would your opinion on that be? I know a lot of people just can't stand commercials anymore.
I'm very happy with my subscriptions to Disney and Criterion, and I don't have to deal with ads on either of those. If I were the one paying for HBO Max, rather than sharing it with you the way I shared Disney Plus with you, I probably would pay a little extra to go ad-free. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I don't really mind when Tubi does it. Runs a few ads.
Well, it all depends on what the ads are for when it comes to Tubi, since it's a Fox-owned property, and they are very quick to... I mean, look, being a Democrat is not a problem. You can't make your news advertisements like, and the Democrats. I think you just blew your cover. I mean, at least MSNBC and CNN basically say, it's probably true. See, I'm saying probably true. I don't want to offend my right-wing friends. I mean, that's probably the most fun thing I've had on Facebook recently is putting an insurrection meme up and having three of my professional wrestling friends who actually made a name for themselves in the business argue over it.
Well, let's go back to the vampire thing, because I missed that you were interested in doing a vampire episode. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think I could talk about enough movies for a full episode if we were going to talk about vampires.
Well, you could always go with the concept, as I've been pretty much doing recently with the bitter Mitch from Morbidly Macabre. Not going to air up our little rivalry and how we're ruining champagne friendliness on the podcast, but we just did Dance of the Dead and made 2 hours out of that. And then we have my recent one with Andrew Teedy, stand-up comedian from the Champaign area, which was basically a way of just talking about Ghostbusters. And, maybe we'll get back to... Well, I'll probably try to get back to him once Afterlife comes out. So basically I'm out of content for 5 months from what I can tell. I digress, though. I mean, when it comes to vampire movies, I don't know. Do you have a particular favorite one, or do you just haven't watched enough?
I don't think I have a particular favorite. I've seen plenty of different ones over the years. There are still a few blind spots. I haven't yet gotten around to any of the famous Hammer Dracula movies, though I've worked my way through much of the Universal cycle. Mm-hmm. I saw the other day, because I have been working through 80s movies, I did see The Lost Boys. Mm-hmm. It didn't really do anything for me. So
Joel Schumacher at his finest would be Batman Forever for you?
No, I don't think so. I don't know
if
there is a
Batman
best.
and Robin.
I don't know if I've ever seen something I'd call best.
What? I mean, did he direct The Wiz or just wrote that?
No, he only wrote it. Sidney Lumet did The Wiz.
Oh, great. That's some trivia I did not need.
Well, let me bring this around again. They originally, for The Wiz, they wanted John Badham, who would have been coming right off of Saturday Night Fever. But he kind of lost faith in the project. I think it may or may not have had to do with how Berry Gordy was, because Motown was co-producing the film with Universal, was pushing to get Diana Ross in as the lead.
Right.
And in any case, Badham decided he didn't want to do the project, and instead he stuck with Universal, but he did the Dracula remake in 79 instead with Frank Langella.
Okay, alright, I was about to say, dang, that's a blind spot for me. That's probably one of Mom's favorite Draculas.
It's a worthwhile movie.
Christopher Lee is going to be her favorite, but...
Bam's Dracula is good. It's an interesting take. I do agree with those who say it doesn't quite work as a straight horror movie because of the approach, but it is interesting as one of the first romanticized vampire movies.
Oh, okay.
And in that it's not just that the vampire is sexy, but it's trying to romanticize the character somewhat.
Oh, right. Well,
It's also got the most slept-on John Williams score ever, perhaps. That and The Accidental Tourist.
Well, with Frank Langella, sadly, I am a Masters of the Universe kid, so otherwise all I really know is old Frank Langella. Was he actually in that Edward Furlong movie about video games?
Brain Scan?
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Okay. Yeah, that's one I still had to give a chance. I mean, it's just so silly. Basically anything with Edward Furlong after Terminator 2, which really was his first film, is kind of silly. Green Hornet, I mean, Terminator Dark Fate had his likeness. But thinking about, I had something on my mind. Yeah. Well, I guess when it comes to vampire movies, the one I'm really big on from the 80s, despite I love 2 of the 3 Lost Boys movies. And I think that's more of just how you look back on the 80s, I guess. You being a little older in the 80s probably was immediately over the concept of slasher horror that broke out and such. Like, why would you enjoy that type stuff? I mean, I'm sure you've seen Halloween.
No, I have not gotten around to that just yet.
I figured that would have been on Ebert's list, but...
No, it's not on the Ebert list.
Okay, then nope, can't blame you there. So, Near Dark, though, I guess is my favorite 80s vampire movie.
Near Dark is excellent.
All right, okay.
And it's, I guess they're getting ready to bring that out on Blu-ray in the UK. Yeah. There was a Blu-ray release a few years ago.
Oh yeah, it was at every Walmart, and I'm surprised that it's not to be found anymore.
Yeah, Lionsgate doesn't keep their titles in very quickly. We've talked in other episodes. There's a lot of Lionsgate titles that still haven't made it to Blu-ray at all.
I would imagine that would include a excellent vampire movie in Shadow of the Vampire. That was 2001.
Could be the case.
2000, I think. Like, I went and saw... I had a friend from high school, very afraid of his parents. I'm not going to drop his name, but we're from Morton, AC town.
Right.
Apostolic Christians. And, when I heard his dad was Catholic and converted to AC, it was like... Whoa, it wasn't strict enough for them? But he went to Western, which is a notorious party college.
Right.
But every weekend he would come back to Peoria to spend the weekend and usually watch at least go out to see 2, maybe 3 movies a week, one a night. And honestly, this started around 2000 and... it started around 2001 and... wasn't too bad the first few months of 2001 because you had all the Oscar bait. I saw Crouching Tiger at least 3 times, saw Traffic, saw I think a Gladiator reissue or something during that time, so probably my most cultured month in cinema. And then the 2001 movies came out. Yeah, and it's interesting listening to screen drafts. Some stuff gets better remembered than I do. Like Valentine almost made their aughts slasher draft. Shadow of the Vampire was one of those movies.
Right.
And it's interesting that you say it was 1979's Dracula that first romanticized. Not first, but I'll count Orloff Wanted with Some Love. I thought it was always a romantic concept.
Well, no, as people say, it's hard to see vampirism as romantic when it involves literally feeding off the other. I once read it compared to, it would be like a man falling in love with a cow.
Well, and I actually brought that up. I have a coworker at the bank who is a libertarian vegan, so that's kind of a screwy situation. I think, I hate to say it, I think most people want to be conservative. They just have something they're passionate about that they need to see changed, and then they will say bugger off to progress. I mean, I had plenty of friends who were very much about gay rights, but once they got marriage, it turns to, now give me my guns. And it's like, no, you kind of have to, I don't want to say you got to be one or the other, but if you're looking, it shouldn't be about having your guns, it should be about how to make sure people safely have guns. I was telling my coworker when I was explaining that, the new coworker, about her attitudes and stuff, being a vegan libertarian, like, he says that's weird, and it's like, yeah, you see, I can't do veganism because I need the concept that something has died for me. It's the closest thing I get to being a vampire. The chicken nugget. Dare I say, I think I can love a chicken nugget. Definitely a chicken wing. Actually, that plays into my favorite, one of my, the only other watchable Lost Boys movie, which is Lost Boys: The Thirst, where we find out the person that hires Edgar Frog to go and kill the vampires and save her little brother is basically Stephanie Myers. And she goes off about how, you've heard of my books. Yeah, you're a fan? No. You make vampire. There's nothing romantic about being a blood sucker. So there's it's plenty of comedy, which I think is what brings you to the Lost Boys. I don't know, I guess it would be the comedy, because it's not necessarily a scary movie. So if you're not into all this juvenile humor, dare I say, I can see where there's a disconnect. While Near Dark is, I don't know, is that one of your classic puberty and growing, at least adolescence stories?
No, I think it's more adult than that. It has more, I would think it having more in common with the film Catherine Bigelow did just a few years later with Point Break, in terms of an outsider being somewhat against his will, conscripted into this group of outsiders that seems likable enough, but is extremely dangerous. There's a surprising amount of parallels between the plots of the two movies in that regard, especially given the wrap-up.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can find her at the Poetic Critic on Letterboxd, so you can definitely trust her experience with cinema. I mean, if you look at my profile, I'm still trying to cut down that 5 stars being at 22%. Which means I just have to see more movies, honestly. And Rory is far more willing to give anything a chance, I would say. I mean, she might not be up on the modern features, but, it's a different Hollywood now. She's basically been around to... the only thing we really missed was the renaissance of the 70s. We both pretty much have seen how, basically, it's all been monopolized. I think you'd agree with that?
Oh, no. Looking back at 80s movies, as much as the corporate hegemony did firmly begin in earnest in that decade and squeezed out some of New Hollywood's creativity, there's still a lot more interesting and varied stuff coming out of that decade than we seem to be seeing now, at least as far as mainstream movies goes. 1984 alone, in that December, you could have gone to a multiplex and seen Dune, or Mickey and Maude, or 2010, or Beverly Hills Cop, or Johnny Dangerously, or Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo came out that month. This was one of the things I liked about 80s All Over, was that it had that more clear-eyed view of just what was going on at the time.
That's 80s All Over, 80'S All Over, if you're going to be searching your podcast apps for that one.
There's no apostrophe.
There's no okay, well, that's
no, you put the apostrophe before the 80. That's how that works.
Oh. No, you're right. Sorry. I don't know. Podcast apps don't usually read apostrophes anyhow. And When you're looking for 90 for chill, it's all one word on iTunes and most apps. But trademarks aren't too pricey, I guess, maybe. I just don't want to end up like stopping this podcast and somebody goes Herb Abrams on that. It's for my wrestling fans. Herb Abrams started the UWF in the 1990s. Now, there was a UWF in the 1980s, but they failed to actually trademark UWF. So, you got this little short Jewish guy who ends up running his business into the ground, doing what he loves, cocaine and hookers. That's an excellent dark side of the ring. I mean, it just sounds fun. But, okay, so 84 was a pretty clear year. I don't know. Then would you say it was a VCR, though, once that really became prominent, that kind of, like, I would say in the 90s, like, you had 2 real movies a weekend going head-to-head, like, listening to the Cinema Snob, which really tells me I just gotta move my ass up to Chicagoland, and all the cool internet guys are up there. Of course, those guys should realize that the internet started in Champaign, but I'll digress. He was talking about seeing Judge Dredd opening weekend, which I think I did too. Mom wanted to see Armand Assante. I wonder if she's ever seen Grizzly. That's what immediately makes me wonder. But she said that Brad, the cinema snob, basically said he saw it with his dad, but his dad asked him, so, opening this weekend, Apollo 13 or Judge Dredd? Oh, we're definitely seeing Judge Dredd. And in his defense, I have not seen Apollo 13, so take that for what it is. Maybe I'm disqualifying myself. We both agree Spiral is a B. That's one of those weird ones, like, Allie bought me a copy of New Mutants for getting the second episode of this podcast that I already reviewed it, but I figured she would like it because I liked it, and she did. But I did give her a heads up before she was going to watch it. I might be in the minority. And then she asked, well, I ended up liking the movie. What was wrong with it? And I sent her a text message back, and I really can't question everything that I wrote down in this text, which I've picked up from critics. Lack of character chemistry, not a lot of mutant stuff, poorly directed and marketed, no real depth of any characters, no stakes, not a good fit to the franchise, nothing memorable. But I still liked it, which is kind of like how the Cinema Snob gave a B to Spiral from the Book of Saw, while his co-reviewer Doug gave it a D, while Brad said, yeah, I can't disagree with anything that you have said in your D review. I mean, 80s movies and vampires, really? So you got Near Dark. I don't know, I didn't take the time to look at it yet, but Once Bitten is fun. I'm sure you saw Once Bitten.
I haven't got around to that yet.
Well, you had
working on.
Well, yeah, but you had a big Jim Carrey period.
Yeah,
in the mid '90s.
No, it was the turn of the millennium more than the mid '90s, but that was one I still never got around to.
Well, I mean, I think, had the same love for the Riddler from Batman Forever as expressed by the professional wrestler Cody Rhodes, who had to spend 5 years portraying the character of Stardust, basically doing the same, and he said, no, that's my sole inspiration for the character. But it wasn't Once Bitten I was thinking of. It was the very tan vampire, George Hamilton.
Love at First Bite from 79.
Yes, was that one you have first seen, or?
I vaguely remember it was on cable a lot as a kid, but I never watched it stem to stern.
Yeah. Well, I mean, tan vampires just don't last too long anyhow. There's a professional wrestler again, Gangrel. And I'm sure it wasn't the wrestler Chris Hazard that I traveled a bit with in Peoria who brought it up, was the first to bring it up. How does it work being a tan vampire? great, kid, you just spoiled 10 years of my gimmick. I don't know, you've been catching up on 80s movies, and we weren't prepared for a vampire talk. Other ideas, though, I've come up with for the podcast, and this again goes back to Morbidly Macabre. I think you're getting enough love, me pushing you. They do an excellent episode on the 27 Club, and I will say their Benoit episode serves the person of Chris Benoit well, just not the wrestling business well. That's all I said. Did not need a 5-minute rant after you talk about the 27 Club. You were familiar with the 27 Club, correct?
Yes, I've heard of that.
Thank you. So, but they kept on doing Dewey Cox jokes at one point. And it's like, great. So I got movie about fake music comes to mind. Like UHF, that never gets enough love on this podcast. It's an interesting dynamic between mom and dad, because it's like, I think dad actually watched UHF before he let us watch it, since it was a PG-13 rated movie.
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, he just put it on for, like, I got this, and put it on for us. And while mom hated Weird Al, I think, pretty much. But it's funny, I was at the diaper party for our little brother, who's expecting a kid, I think, in a couple months. He was trying to expand our musical taste. I mean, not the R as in the royal R as in the bar patrons, and started playing Don't Pay the Ferryman.
Yeah, Christopher.
Yeah, I don't know what's more scarring, the overplaying of Moody Blues or Krista Berg really just very much being overt about his storytelling in songs. I mean, it's not movie related unless Lady in Red, was that an 80s movie?
No.
Okay. I thought there was something with Gene Wilder.
The Woman in Red.
Yes.
And that's the one with the Stevie Wonder soundtrack.
Oh, okay. But we were talking earlier about John Waters and eating dog poop. That just happened beforehand. I don't think there's anything about that. Rory explained the scene pretty well. They were talking about pink flamingos. And I think it's just the fun of making humor ridiculous. Like, you know, you take something very simple, which might make you chuckle, and then you just drive it over the top with appropriate music and patience. Any other examples from cinema that you kind of... Like, I know Monty Python did it plenty well. Like, ending the entire scene with the guy who explodes from eating, with the person cleaning up the mess. But at least...
Russ.
I'm leaving it there, but just taking it to a new extreme.
Well, absurdist humor is very hard to pull off. For any movie that can get it right, there's ones that don't get so far. I've seen the Mr. Show movie, Run, 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 and that makes a go of this sort of thing, but doesn't get there. I can see why it wound up getting buried by the distributor.
I just find it very interesting because you showed me Criterion Channel's trailer.
Yeah, they're doing a John Waters program this month.
Yep, and
because they have a few films in the collection, and thinking about stuff that comedies that go for absurdist humor, I think one problem now is that a lot of it does end up being more unpleasant than funny.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Borat, I think, pretty much nailed it.
It's hard to talk about this sort of things because we all have our reputations to protect.
Okay.
It's hard to describe these sort of things.
Well,
I didn't expect you to lead me into trying to explain this, but it's hard to do that and keep something like this PG rated, or at least PG-13.
Yeah.
But...
I think it's... No, it's just, at this point, just coming up with stuff to talk about. I mean, look at Mel Brooks. I mean, I don't know if you'd say he's totally absurdist. Blazing Saddles is definitely one of the most absurd comedies, I think. Like, you can start with the Hedley Lamar stuff, and then his speech where he's trying to have Slim Pickens write down everybody he needs.
Right.
And it's fun to watch it on paid TV, on regular cable, just because you see which ones they cut out.
I don't I think he's more meta than absurdist. When he does go into that mode, especially the final stretch of Blazing Saddles, he's very good at it.
Now, would you want, with that being said, would you have wanted to see Kubrick go as absurd as he wanted to go with Dr. Strangelove?
For those who don't know, as originally scripted, there was supposed to be a giant pie fight as the finale of Dr. Strangelove. And it was shot. But it was decided it didn't really fit the scene, and also the film was going to ended up coming out not long after Kennedy had been assassinated, JFK.
Yeah.
And I thought the timing might be off. The line in the scene where Slim Pickens runs down the emergency supply kit had to change the line. It was a guy could have a great weekend in Vegas with all that stuff. It was originally supposed to be Dallas. He had to reloop the line.
Well, truth be told, I've never really heard that about Dallas's reputation that way, so I think it really works out better.
Right. But, no, by all accounts, the pie fight ending just didn't work on the whole. And they found... I'm told it was a genuine absurdist comedian. Spike Milligan, who was a very close colleague of Peter Sellers going back to the days of the Goon Show in the 1950s, who suggested the ending they went with, the We'll Meet Again ending. This is how I remember it anyway.
Okay.
It's been a long time. Now, by all accounts, that the pie fight just didn't work as well. And between that and the timing issue, it wasn't worth trying to push.
So, when it comes to absurdist, then, would that be... I guess it's good for me to get boundaries, and the Poetic Critic knows how to set those up. So, what would you say about pre-Annie Hall at Woody Allen?
I like the early Woody Allen stuff in the vein of Bananas or Sleeper.
But I'm just saying, is that more absurdist?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's been almost random sometimes.
You see, I've seen Bananas. I have not seen Sleeper. I had plenty of fun with everything you wanted to ever know about sex, but was afraid to ask. Yeah,
the early ones do edge closer to absurdism. The way the plots work out can feel almost random at times.
Definitely.
Going back to What's New Pussycat, which was his first screenplay. Well, he wasn't happy with how it worked out. But doing absurdist comedy is a very hard thing. And I think too often it does get conflated with vulgarity. And it can be used well.
Yes.
John Waters is proof of that. But a lot of it's the attitude, which was why Waters was able to do milder films later in his career, but that have the same kind of energy to it.
Oh, well,
looking at the original Hairspray, there's stuff there that wouldn't... It's PG rated, but there's stuff there that wouldn't be out of place in the earlier films.
Yes, I haven't seen either Hairspray, but Crybaby.
Yeah, Crybaby is pretty much the spiritual successor to Hairspray. Right. So if you like one, you'll probably like the other.
That's good to know. But I guess we could transition that to absurd, as in just crazy performances. And, if we're going to talk about one Hollywood blacklisted person, Woody Allen, what about your Johnny Depp? He pretty much... I think he thought for a moment he was Brad Pitt before he was Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt gets pretty much now equated to being a character actor who just happens to be the sexiest man alive. Well, Johnny Depp kind of had that streak started once he did... Johnny Depp had that legitimate streak from the 90s onward, starting with the fact he was willing to work with people like John Waters and Tim Burton. Because remember, Crybaby and Edward Scissorhands were the same year. Oh, you see, I didn't remember that. But yeah, they were released a few months apart. And... Ed Wood, obviously. Right. He was someone who understood
camp and did it well. But around 2010 came the huge drop-off, and when you hear about what his personal life started sliding into around that time, it's not surprising that things were going to go downhill. When you're associating so tightly with people like Hunter S. Thompson and Marlon Brando, you're walking on a fine line.
You can't have both. Let's just, I think I'll say that. I mean, John Cusack, I don't know many Brando stories with him. Bill Murray, same thing. Like, you can only travel in a convertible with a blow-up doll with so many people, and you just can't have Brando. I was having a discussion with Mom earlier. It was about something about Native American. We're genealogy stuff, and I think it's better to avoid that for my sake. Let's just say, listen to your DNA test. Let's see, we've done vampires a little bit, we've done absurdist humor a little bit.
I don't know how much of this you're going to find usable. I don't know what the rest of this episode's going to be like.
Well, I don't know. It's pretty much, we're at the 35-minute mark, and no, we're just, it's going to be more difficult having a title for this than anything.
Well, what if you run into somebody later this week you want to do an episode?
Well,
you could just do the greatest hits.
Yeah, no, I could probably split this up into like 2 YouTube videos at 15 minutes a piece or so. What did fascinate me, and kind of alluded to it, was that you've been watching a lot of 80s movies recently.
Yeah.
And we've all pretty much determined that is a weird time when it came to running time. I think we've talked about it with the Ivan Reitman, Harold Ramis, Bill Murray episode about how Reitman and John Landis pretty much said, no, if there's funny stuff, we're going to film it all. Ghostbusters, I'm about to say, is a perfect movie, but obviously Stripes and even Animal House weren't. So it's just basically, you said the movies you've been watching not necessarily fit in the parameters of 90 for chill. What do you think really happened, in your opinion, I guess, and when it came to why we decided to just, go from, 12 minutes a reel? So, 8 reels to 10, 15, 13 wheels.
I don't think the reel length has anything to do with this. What is interesting is why movies were shorter in the 80s.
Yeah.
I think it was Tasha Robinson who was writing for the AV Club website who said it could have been the influence of MTV, could have been just theaters wanting to get more shows in a day.
Oh.
But there are a lot more 90 to 105 minute movies in the 80s than in the surrounding decades. I mean, you do sometimes get titles that run significantly longer, especially anything that was being positioned as Oscar bait,
Well,
if you're going to do an epic historical movie, it's almost a given you're going to end up going past 2. But otherwise, you have a lot of substantially shorter movies.
Well, I find Oscar bait really interesting because let's go back to Woody Allen in 1977.
Right.
Where his sub 100 minute movie wins the Best Picture Oscar, which it's definitely a 5-star movie, but I wouldn't put it ahead of Star Wars. I just think Star Wars is a more complete project than, and you know what, let's just throw Jeff Goldblum in here for a quick gag, or pulling the I can't remember the name of the author when they're discussing when he's waiting in line at this film. Don't you wish real life?
Marshall McLuhan?
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't know anything about my work. And I do not understand how you have a job in academia. Don't you wish real life is this way? Or the animated bit with
right.
I guess it's like maybe Annie Hall's the perfect Woody Allen movie just because it's kind of a nice little transitionary piece.
It's certainly the transitional film. It's not my favorite. I don't know if I have one.
Yeah, well, I'd say, I don't know, that or Bananas, because Howard Cosell commentating an assassination is just gold But nobody really comes out good from a Woody Allen movie. Now that you think about it, you try telling these young kids today about the Woolite drinking scene from Everything You Wanted to Know. That just ruins Willy Wonka for them.
Well,
don't even get me started. I mean, I just want to say to these kids, don't even get me started on Hear No Evil, See No Evil. And that has Kevin Spacey, so it's really like, gosh, it's now I kind of saying all this kind of makes me wonder, maybe we are being too harsh on these douchebags. I mean, I've had an argument with about Michael Jackson, since we're talking about Woody Allen, and like seeing what I saw from Leaving Neverland,
yes.
And it's like, I kind of believe the victims in this case, but my libertarian vegan friend at work, no, it's all like either way, Michael. Once you go to court once for this, I'm sorry if you didn't do anything. No, just don't let boys in your bedroom. And then it's kind of like, well, about Face, I really need to watch the Allen versus Farrow documentary, if I'm going to be fair. Do you think we've become too judgmental, or do you think this is kind of a necessary reckoning? Like, I don't want to see people not be able to work, except maybe Louis C.K., because you bounce back the wrong way, buddy. Going on from, I just got myself Me Too'd, and now I'm going to talk about how, they weren't really victims in Parkland. Do you think that's going to help our entertainment business? Because I think in the end, maybe it will.
Well,
or do you just? I've always been like, it's a dark time, and people say, well, you can't make jokes about anything now. And it's like, no, you just really have to be smart about it. So I'm hoping for smarter entertainment out of this.
I'd like to think so, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. One thing I've noticed on film Twitter is that there is a lot more sensitivity that is sometimes applied in the right places, but sometimes not. Such as this need for people to agree with whatever messaging they see a movie as having, and now it's come to the point where some people don't seem to want characters to be making any wrong decisions.
Which totally fails. A character has to make wrong decisions.
Right. Like, they want the entertainment they consume to have the same morals that they do. But art is as unique as a fingerprint and as unique as people. It's very hard to find something that lines up perfectly with your worldview. And it wouldn't be very interesting if that was the case.
Now,
you have to think outside your comfort zone if you're going to appreciate any art medium.
Right, well, that kind of goes into, dare I say, the concept of critical race theory, in the sense that I think it's kind of, I guess, we kind of need stories told from the people of whatever their background is, and we have to stop and listen to said story, but I think you're right, where we want everything to be uniform in a sense. We don't want to have problems with people, or we don't want to be told that we are problematic, I guess. So, I don't know, do you think the audience, is film Twitter just going to be a bunch of bitter people trying to control a narrative? Or do you think maybe we'll come out on this as, just like wiser, if we just listen to the stories and appreciate the stories instead of trying to come up with a uniform sense of morality? Movies are not church. It is, as you said, it's art.
Well, that is up as much to the people who create entertainment as the people, and the people who distribute it as it is to the people who consume it. One of the main problems with the corporate hegemony we have in Hollywood right now, with many of the major and even most of the minor studios, is that it's seen as a zero-sum game. They're only willing to put so many eggs in so many baskets So it's a lot harder for anybody to tell the stories they want to tell if they don't toe a 4-quadrant, all things to all people line. And you get rather bland entertainment out of that when you're trying not to upset anybody. And you inevitably will anyway, because of the way the current discourse, especially in a place like Twitter, works. There's a lot of, say, the colorism issues that In the Heights has been having, in that there are valid points to be made.
And I think Lin-Manuel Miranda got ahead of it and just said, look, yeah, I messed up.
Right. And part of the problem is that...
Well, Rita Moreno says, you're never going to please everybody, so...
Well, she didn't handle that well.
Yeah.
But the point is that part of the problem is that because not enough people are getting opportunities to tell their stories, this leaves projects in more of a bind to try and struggling to be as inclusive as possible so no one feels left out. It's not that trying to do so isn't beneficial for a work of art, but many artists have blind spots, so it would be much easier to just have enough projects open to everybody so you don't have to put all your weight on one thing. It's like what happened with the Pooh on The Simpsons. He was once a fairly popular character with Indians and Indian Americans, as he was a fully developed character, a fun character, but because there were never any other depictions of Indians and Indian Americans in media, that it came to the point where he was an albatross around their necks in terms of cultural representation, and he's no longer seen as just an amusing character, but as something that does get awfully close to something like blackface, or at least enacting a stereotype for the amusement of others.
Yeah. Well, this goes into a lot of, especially the Asian community trying to, tell their story right now. And I know a lot of people are over the moon about Crazy Rich Asians. And now you have actors saying, yeah, we kind of laid into the stereotypes a little too much on that one, despite the fact that it gave a large amount of Asians a project.
But part of that issue is that you're saying Asians as if it's one hegemonous group.
No, it isn't. It's
homogenous.
Right? No, they should have called it East Asians or whatever. But that's a far wordier title. We're walking into we're kind of, I guess we're only looking, just a preface anything, we're just looking at how people are looking at art right now and trying to figure out how to get over people who are just, I don't want to say overly sensitive, because I think you should be very sensitive about your representation, but I think it's more about the keyboard warriors who are just trying to be more woke than the next person.
Oh, yes. There's always people like that.
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm trying to tread lightly now because we're two white, cis people. And, we're just trying to judge the commentary. We definitely don't know everybody's experiences, which I'm saying is, and I think you agree, I think we'd be better off if we got to know everybody's experiences instead of trying to not offend anybody. So I guess we're kind of desperate for more independent film then to come back to...
It would be nice if there were more of a thriving art scene in the United States in general, but I don't think that's going to happen. The government has traditionally never been very supportive of the arts in this country. Yeah. It's been that way for decades.
Well, I would probably say we have a few playwrights and Mark Twain. We've got some great commentary. The guy who wrote The Jungle. Obviously Orwell, 84. I don't know. It's interesting being an American because it's not, and I can see why
Why are you bringing George Orwell into this?
Well, no, I'm just saying in terms of great
he wasn't
author.
an American.
Oh, so okay. Well, see, I blame the education system for just saying, "Oh, Orwellian." No, it totally makes sense that he wasn't one. But I'm just trying to Upton Sinclair. See, it's coming to my mind. Everything. But I'm just saying we've never been a very artistic country to begin with, it seems. Like the 60s was pretty much our peak in a lot of ways with Warhol. And that's still more of a commentary on what is art. So we need more art, but we're not going to get more art, I think is where we're at right now.
At this point, yes.
I know, you can't expect the government of the United States to do anything about anything, sadly. So we're not going to get more art in school. So I don't know. I mean, Pixar, well, even you brought up that Pixar is more of a capitalist interpretation of imagination.
That was not
your idea.
Not my idea. I was just mentioning that this was being discussed on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the mouse to make things better?
There's nothing I could say that could make a difference as a consumer or even someone who creates in their spare time. The mouse, or Disney, as the Walt Disney Company, as we would properly call it, is going to go where the money is. And they don't have any qualms working in places like China. I can't see that, and they've been very slow to try and diversify what they have, be it the Marvel movies or Star Wars.
So I think you're pretty much of the opinion, aside from their animated features and however they can expand upon those already established IPs, they're not doing anything for originality, really?
No, they only have occasional original concepts anymore. I mean, their next animated feature, Encanto, is an original concept. Okay. But I think they've become too beholden to the formulas that work. And there are tons of videos online that go into this further than I do. But if any company is going to keep reinforcing a capitalist mindset and try to be completely middle of the road, it's Disney. And people are plenty happy to vote with their wallets for more Marvel movies or Star Wars, so there's no incentive for them to meaningfully change.
Well, I'm going to say this, though. I've been enjoying the Marvel TV series they've done so far, and it's like, I'm kind of cool with them just spending television money right now. I mean, I think I've still had too much Marvel for the last 23 years. I want my Star Wars movies, but I don't know. And with that being said, if Black Widow doesn't make its money, which it's difficult to make money anyhow. I mean, Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard was the top movie this week with $11 million. If Black Widow doesn't do anything, do you think we're going to see a change and probably the end of cinema as we know it then?
No, you couldn't put that strictly on a movie like that, not only because we are coming out of a unique situation with the pandemic having affected distribution. There's also the fact that Disney planned so far ahead that they have a whole bunch of more movies and shows to work through with Marvel alone.
Yeah, but they
can't go back on now.
Yeah, but they've gone and pretty much pumped the brakes on my Star Wars stuff.
They're still doing plenty of Star Wars.
Yes, but I'm just saying it's all television now, really. Like, I don't...
They feel that streaming is where the money is right now, far more than theatrical.
Okay.
That's part of their thinking. They announced that last year when they did the big run where they were announcing all these different projects. And with the movies, I don't think they want to repeat the problems they had with the sequel trilogy and Solo. I mean, it's been pointed out, they haven't really done much with those universes since they wrapped them up. Merchandising has been pulled back for newer characters.
I'm upset that I can't buy my Rey lightsaber. Rey's lightsaber is not Luke's lightsaber. Rey's lightsaber is the yellow blade. Is basically looks like a piece of junk, but it's our piece of junk, people. Which does bring me to this, and I think we can close her out. And you liked it on Facebook, something you did catch from my Facebook feed.
Right.
When I talked about leaving Saw and Spiral Book of Saw, which I brought up to you, is like, I think the problem is that when you play a cop character, you should be stuck playing that cop character. Murtaugh should have been fighting Predator, not whatever his name was. It would have been great to have Riggs there, too, but maybe it would have been too tough for the Predator in that case. But Chris Rock definitely should have been his cop from Lethal Weapon 4 in Spiral.
I don't remember any of this.
No, I briefly said it, and we're doing this after you got off work, so.
Right.
But that thing you liked was about how I found a couple of people now who like newer stuff, and when they see it, they attach themselves to that more than the original classic stuff. Like, I know people now who appreciate the sequel trilogy, and they're not kids. Like, everybody excuses the prequels because they can't, that's a generation's Star Wars.
Right.
But now we're not to that point. Like, I don't know if it's just having, maybe Rey is now paying off, and, like, given some time, like the prequels are given some time, the sequels might be able to do something again. Because there's an audience for it. People liked Rey and related to her.
There might be down the line once Disney exhausts the more profitable concepts.
So it's basically Disney's just going to keep doing what they're doing until the stock goes down.
Yes.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Disney has no incentive to change right now. It's that big of a company. Even if Black Widow doesn't make money, it's not like any of their recent releases are making huge bank. The market just isn't set up for anybody to do that.
Well, Cruella looks like it's doing okay, but
it's an issue of managing loss at this point.
Okay.
And I think they have enough money that they can withstand this. I mean, they did see a huge boom in subscribers. I would say that the problems the theme parks had due to the pandemic were probably more damaging to the bottom line.
All right. Well, and you thought you were never going to use that accounting associates for anything, didn't you? Again, the Poetic Critic, one of the smartest minds on film Twitter. I'm not going to ask you for your Twitter handle because you already sort of said it. But if you're looking for fun movies, go to letterboxd/CNDarth. If you're looking for the wise movies, go to the 5-star stuff of the Poetic Critic. If you can find 5-star stuff, she's tougher than I am.
I've got given a few films 5 stars.
So
Wouldn't say they were necessarily wise, though.
Well, I don't know. I think you're wiser if you watch excellent cinema. You should become wiser. I mean, it goes back to Obi-Wan Kenobi saying the difference between knowledge and wisdom. But I guess my biggest problem with Letterboxd right now is that, and it's not my problem with Letterboxd, it's my problem with you people out there and your top 150 movies. So I went through the first 3 pages of this. Oh, I could redo this, all right. And then I go back and check out my profile, and it lists your films in yearly release.
Yeah.
Chronological release.
That's the default anyway.
Right. Okay, so I go to, all right, let's see how many I really have on this 5th page. And we go from 1979 to 12 Angry Men. People, start watching older movies. Make them more popular. Make my algorithm look better. And I shouldn't say 1979. I should say 1972. Thank you, Francis Ford Coppola. So go to letterboxd.com/ThePoeticCritic, all in word, and look at what she really likes and start watching those. That's what I should do tonight. I'm probably going to go home and watch, let's see, we're at the M's, I think, in the terms of I'm at the L's in terms of Allie's Accessory Shop on Etsy's Trash Feature Reviews. Not looking promising. I'm going to have to say that. Next week, I will do, previously on 90forshow.com, a movie that qualifies that I find on Rory's Letterboxd page. So with that all said, and thank you for just BSing with me for an hour. I know you were fighting off this sleepiness, and I'm sorry but you really came through like you always do. You know, you just gotta drag your friends. It's not that hard to get a podcast going. Drag your friends into one. You know, you got a lot of female friends. You just have to make a clever vagina joke in your title, and boom.
You know, it's because of this that I'm reluctant to work with you.
Well, no, it's like, I just know a lot of female comedians who complain about all the, it's a ladies' night titles, but hey, it gets them in the door. Like, if you get, okay, I digress, because that's, you are a modest creature. But aside from at the letterboxd.com/ThePoeticCritic, do you have any other things you want to promote?
Not today.
Okay. And, of course, you can find me on Twitter. I know it's a change to @CatBusRuss, but that's where you get most of my writing updates that are also on maineventofthedead.com. I have my zombie screenplay I'm still trying to get out of developmental hell. Or I'd like to say purgatory. You know, be a little bit more optimistic. You can send me requests for a treatment of that pro wrestling zomcom. Email russthebus07@gmail.com, or you can direct message me on Twitter as well. So thanks again for coming, and I'm sorry, thanks again for returning to the podcast. We don't need any of that other kind of arrival on this podcast. Thanks again, and thank you very much again, The Poetic Critic.
You're welcome.
Can I hear a wahoo?